Today we're going to show you how to install one of our hand-operated emergency well pumps in a common residential water well. Now what I mean by common is it has a 6-inch casing, it has a submersible pump, and a pitless adapter. Now this is standard construction in the northern areas. That pitless adapter allows all those water pipes involved in your well to remain underground and under the frost line. So there's no pipes coming out of here, so we know we have a pitless adapter. This pipe right here is actually electrical conduit. When you take this cap off, you're going to see electrical wires in there. So let's get started.
Here's a list of the tools that you need for the install. These are listed in your PDF printable instructions, or you could just take a screenshot of this or print screen. Pretty simple and common tools here.
What you want to do is you want to flip it over. Then you're going to see these foam packaging things. Take these out and let's take a look inside. One thing you're going to notice is that all the parts are tightly packed, and you're going to see labels on all our parts. So you're going to have 2 bags of small parts, accessory packet A. That's what you're going to need for the installation. It's got some spare nuts, an eye bolt, a U-bolt, and a grommet. And then accessory packet B. But the first thing we're going to do is get the safety rope. We're going to unravel it, and we're going to tie it to a 2 or 3 foot 2x4 or a 2x6 with a hole drilled in the middle. But you definitely want one end of the safety rope attached to the pump and another attached to this 2x4 or something else that's solid. Now the reason for this is as you install it, the weight of the rope hanging in the well will eventually become great enough so it's going to pull that entire rope into the well. If it's not tied to something, you're going to lose your safety rope and lose your backup. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to remove the extensions. Each extension is going to consist of a 5-foot long pipe with female and male threaded adapters on them. We've got some white ones, and we're going to have one blue one, and then we want to have the pump rods or the sucker rods. They're all going to be stretch wrapped together, so you take time to cut loose that stretch wrap, and then we're going to place these in the lid next to the well. All our standard well pumps are black, so you just kind of pull it off the bottom of the box. And then you want to remove the pump head from the black pump. In many cases, in the AR style pumps and the Slim Jim pumps, it just comes right off, but with these AK pumps, the rod actually goes through the pump head. Remove the nut on the end of that rod. This is just done for shipping purposes, and then just unscrew the pump from the pump head. Remove that pump head and then replace that nut. In the bottom of our pump, you're going to see this shipping foam that we stick in the bottom of our foot valve, and that just keeps the ball from rattling around inside there. And then once you remove that foam, you can hear that ball rattling, and that foot valve is now functional. These labels that are attached to the pump are specifically designed to be removable. So the first step is to attach the safety rope to the bottom of the pump. This is the bottom of the pump. You'll notice a through hole here. Work that through both holes. And then instead of tying a knot, this is polypropylene rope. It's got very poor knotting qualities. We're going to take the uphill side, or the long end. We're going to untwist it. And we're going to stick the tail and just kind of weave that back. It's a very simple splice to do, and the reason why we do this is the knotting quality of polypropylene is very poor, and couple that with most people just absolutely suck at knots. So you got this simple splice at the bottom of your pump. Now this is the top of the pump, and here's the piston rod coming out of the pump about 7.5 inches or so, and we're going to take a pump rod, and it's got this on one end. It's going to have this coupling nut and a jam nut, and we're going to thread that onto the piston rod. Now you want the rods to touch end to end inside that coupling nut, and then move that bottom jam nut up so it meets that coupling nut. Then you want to take two 7/16 inch wrenches, grab those two jam nuts, and then just tighten them against each other, not even an eighth of a turn. This is not Superman tight. You certainly don't want to strip those threads, but when those nuts jam against each other in different directions, they're going to lock in place. And then you take an extension, a pipe extension. It's going to have the female threads on one end. You're going to thread it over the pump rod, and being careful not to cross thread. They are plastic threads. Screw that onto the top of the pump, and you'll notice we're not using any kind of Teflon tape on these pipe joints. That is intentional. We want these joints to leak. And just hand tight is really all you need. Even for a deep well installation, hand tight is all you need. So we have a pump, a pump rod, and an pipe extension attached to the pump, and we're ready to put this in the well. Again, we're going to recommend strongly that this is a two-person job. One person doing the actual installation, the other person just holding that safety rope at all time, keeping a little tension on it as it gets lowered into the well. Here we've taken the cap off, we pulled the wires out, we of course turned the power off at the circuit breaker. You could see very clearly that when we install this, no part of the pump ever touches the ground. It's a very sanitary and simple installation. Some of our competition, you actually have to lay the thing out on the ground for 50, 75, 100 feet and glue it together in the field before you install it. And then you have to install this giant monster thing into the well in one giant step. So here's our first pump with its extension on it. Simply lower it into the well, and then we're going to lock it in place with that Wonder Block. Here's a close-up of that Wonder Block, that notch 2x4 that holds everything in place. We call it the Wonder Block because people wonder what it's for. That's the only thing holding the pump in place at this time, so you definitely want to keep dogs and kids away from the installation. And again, that second person is holding tension on that safety rope. Again, rule number one, never drop anything into the well. So now we're simply going to add extensions, and each extension consists of a pump rod and a pipe with the male and female threaded adapters on it. Everything just screws together. It's a question of how many of these extensions we're going to use to get to the depth of the water. So here's a close-up of that operation. We want to take that black protective cappy thing off. Take another stainless steel pump rod. Screw it onto the last one. Again, we want the rods to go end to end inside that coupling nut. Spin up that other jam nut. And then two 7/16 wrenches. Jam those nuts against each other, lock it in place. Then take a pipe with the female threads. Again, no field gluing, everything is pre-glued for you, so it's super easy and everything's fully cured. Don't cross thread that bad boy. Hold the bottom one in place and then just kind of hand tighten that upper one. Pull some slack in your safety rope and carefully lower it into the well another 5 feet and lock it in place with the Wonder Block. Now we're just going to continue this process, and each well is different in terms of its depth. We're going to continue to add extensions until we're at the installation depth. Now the last pipe that you're going to install is that blue one. That's going to be our uppermost drop pipe, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But now it's time. If it's shallow, this is going to go pretty quick. If you're going down 100 feet or so, it's going to take a little bit of time. But it's just rod and pipe, 5 feet at a time, until you get to that last one, which will be that blue one. And again, make sure you don't drop your tools into your well. That's bad. Now as you go deeper and deeper, you're going to notice a couple things. There's very little pipe exposed above this wonder block, and sometimes it gets really difficult to kind of let go of that pipe at the last second to get it to engage the wonder block. So we installed in accessory packet B this extension handle, and what we're going to do is we're going to use this on our uppermost drop pipe, and all you simply do is screw it onto the male threads of each extension. It gives you a little more to grab onto as that pump gets heavier and heavier inside that well. You can really pinch yourself between the wonder block and that upper adapter as you go deeper and deeper. Now this blue uppermost drop pipe is color coded for a reason. It has a special adapter on the top, and it also has a weep hole drilled right here, so it drains aggressively for the first 5 feet in the wintertime. In a day like this, if there's water in the pipe and it's above the frost line in the well, it's going to freeze, and that's bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to lower this into the well, and you can see there's a little more weight on this. You can see that safety rope pulling itself in by its own weight. And then we're going to grab onto that extension handle and lower it on that wonder block without pinching ourselves in the process. And if you're doing this and it's not the last one, you simply just remove this pipe handle and install it onto the next extension. And you're going to have to do that each time. It does get heavy, especially when you're exceeding 100 feet. I've drawn a lot of blood installing these pumps. You just pinch yourself there, and this handle prevents that from happening. The next step is to secure that uppermost drop pipe to the well casing. Included in your kit is a stainless steel U-bolt. We're going to drill that casing and install that U-bolt and tighten it from the outside. We're going to clamp that uppermost drop pipe against that casing, and it's going to hold it rock solid in place. So what you want to do is take off the base of that U-bolt, and you want to line it up with your uppermost drop pipe. You want to be about 10 inches down, maybe 10 or 12 inches down, and line up the center of that base with your drop pipe, and then using a Sharpie, mark those holes, and then center punch those holes so you can get your drill started. Now before you start drilling, the drill bit is going to go through there, so you definitely want to move that pipe out of the way. You want to visually inspect the inside of the casing, make sure there's no wires or anything else that you're going to hit. Now we're going to drill these holes. We're going to use a 5/16 drill bit. Yes, the legs on that U-bolt are 1/4 inch, but it's impossible to get the exact center to center distance and alignment on a curved surface. So we use a 5/16 drill bit in order to pull that off. Okay, so your holes are drilled here, and you definitely want to test fit it with the U-bolt. Make sure it's properly aligned. If your holes are off a little bit, you can kind of wobble it from side to side to get a little more lateral movement. You can also take a pair of channel locks and crunch these down or expand them open a little bit. But basically you want that U-bolt to go in the holes at this time. Now it is super easy to drop this U-bolt into the well during this time, so make sure you don't do that. We're visually lining it up. Then after you get it through the holes, you want to install that base back onto it. Spin your nuts on. You want to lift up your pump quite a bit, 6-8 inches or so above where you need it to be, and then do your first tightening of these nuts. You just want to hold it in place. It doesn't take much if it's a shallow pump that you're installing. If it's a deeper pump like over 100 feet, yeah, you may want to tweak on them a little bit. At this point in time, you just want to bend that base plate so it conforms to the casing. And not super tight. This is not your final position, but you want to be higher than you want to be in your final position, because it's a lot easier to lower your pump into that final position rather than trying to raise it up. Okay, so we drilled another hole much closer to the rim of the casing. Now if you look carefully at the eye bolt, you have this little notch, and you want that up for maximum strength. So again, don't drop it in the well. Spin on that nut, and in this case, yes, you can do your final tight here. Now we're going to tie the safety rope off to this eye bolt. We're going to pull up the slack, but we want to have a good 5 feet or so outside of the top of the well casing. Now here's the mistake that's really easy to make. When you cut this, you want to be holding onto the side that goes into the well. If you're holding on to the wrong side when you cut it, the weight of that rope could pull your entire safety rope into oblivion. Then you want to use a lighter and melt the end of that rope so it doesn't fray. Then using that splice we use at the bottom of the pump, we want to do that same thing, thread it through the eye bolt, then kind of work it through itself 3 times. And then once you have that splice, you can just drop that into the well casing and then stuff your wires back inside. So next thing we want to do is we want to drill an 1.5 inch hole into the cap. That's going to slide over this drop pipe, and the diameter of this pipe is 1 50,000, so we're better 1 1/16 of an inch. So you divide that in half, and it's a strong 1/2 inch. Draw a line to the center of that casing. Now each of your well caps are different in construction, so the math may be different. The math comes out it's a strong 1 inch. Center punch that, and then using an 1.5 inch hole saw, now with your grommet, it's got 2 lips on it, and you want to cut away the lower lip. Depending on your cap, you may try and keep part of that lower lip intact. What we just found it's just easier to cut that lower lip off. And you're ready to reinstall that cap. Again, we want to make sure you have a nice tight bend on this electrical wire. Slip it over that drop pipe. Get it centered as best you can. Now hopefully your hole in the pipe is going to look like this. You know, I've done this a bazillion times. If you really screw it up royally, you can always just buy a new cap. But again, your pipe can flex towards the middle if there's an error. That way it cannot move this way at all. Then you want to tighten the bolts to hold it in place. And you're ready for the grommet. Now taking that grommet that we've trimmed, we want to wet it so it's a little lubricated. We're just going to use snow in this case. You can pour a little bit of water on it, slip it over that drop pipe, and then kind of push it down onto the drop pipe. Now if it turns inside out, not a problem, don't worry about that, you can fix it later. So here you can see it's completely inside out. Get it right back to where it needs to be and push it right down into that hole. And now we have a really great seal to keep all the bugs out, and we're ready to rock and roll. At this point in time, we're ready to install the pump head. We've got this last pump rod in place. It's going to have a nut on it. Want to remove that nut, make sure you don't lose it. Then you want to lift this pump rod up, quite a bit. Now inside this pump head there's a baffle right about here, and we want to thread the pump head through that baffle, and we're going to thread through the hole in the top. There we go. Then reinstall that nut. That nut's going to keep that rod from falling into the pump head. And carefully align it and screw the pump head onto that special fitting in the blue drop pipe. Install your spigot, and then the T-handle simply spins on. And then you lock that T-handle in place. It's got the same 2 jam nuts and coupling nut like the pump rods. So the final step is to get your final height, and then you can aim your spigot wherever your bucket's going to be. You want to have about 3 or 4 inches of this blue pipe exposed above your cap so it can flex a little bit. Especially if you're going to be using that lever, you want that thing to flex. Now we worked the grommet up a little bit so it doesn't get in the way. You can loosen your nuts on your U-bolt, get it to the right height. You can aim this wherever you want. We're going to aim it right there. It's pretty good to start with. Then you can do your final tight on those nuts of the U-bolt, and that's going to hold it rock solid in place. And then you work that grommet back down so it seals that hole, and you're pretty much good to go. So now we're ready to pump water. We put the 1 gallon milk jug on this little platform here that we made temporarily. We got some blue food coloring in that 1 gallon milk jug so you can see the water. This is actually a little bit higher than you want. I know we're going to put a lever on it later on, but actually if it's just about mid to a little bit above mid thigh, that's probably your best ergonomic position. You want short 8 to 10 inch strokes. So there's going to be several dry strokes, and then the water's going to come out. Again, short 8 to 10 inch strokes. You actually be lifting the water on the upstroke, and there's no resistance going down. But you can see this pump produces quite a bit of water. In this case, we're lifting 33 feet, and we got a gallon of water that quick. There's going to be some water spitting out of the top there. That's normal. And you now have water security. Now we do have a separate video after the install. It's a short video on some tricks of the trade for using this pump. It shows you how to hide the pump and how to store water and all those other options for the pump head. So watch that short video. It's getting cold right now. It's about 3 degrees outside, so we're going to call it quits for today and make that video later. Thanks for watching.